Zen at the Sharp End. Welcome to the podcast about how to turn difficult people and relationships into your best teachers. I'm Mark Westmackett, a Zen Buddhist teacher, mindfulness teacher, and ex-professional astronomer. This is a podcast to go along with my book, Zen and the Art of Dealing with Difficult People. In each episode, we'll be exploring different varieties of people, relationships, and situations that we find irritating, difficult, or painful. Together with a number of Zen friends, I'll be discussing how the practices of Buddhism and mindfulness can help us see our difficult people as troublesome Buddhas, our greatest teachers. This podcast is sponsored by Zen Minded. If you get a chance, check them out at www.zenminded.uk. You'll find a curated selection of Japanese homeware and incense, a perfect match to your meditation practice. We're also sponsored by BetterHelp. BetterHelp offers convenient and affordable therapy online. In my opinion, meditation and psychotherapy both offer valuable avenues for exploring our suffering, habits, and stuck areas. A while back I spent 3.5 years meeting twice a week with a psychotherapist when things had become acute, and it felt like the help he gave me was really transformational, especially when supported by my regular meditation practice. If you're interested, they've extended an offer of 10% off your first month of therapy at betterhelp.com/zen at the sharp end. That's betterhelp, HELP.com/zen at the sharp end. In this episode, I'm talking to Zenways sangha member Frank Cooke, who's worked in finance as a stockbroker until his retirement just a few years ago. Frank first got into meditation in the 1990s as a way of helping him deal with the stresses of work and having a young family. And in this interview, he describes how initially he found more concentrated, breath-focused meditation to be of more immediate benefit, helping him to, as he calls it, dial down the noise, to create some space, to step back from the busyness of daily life and find that kind of peace and quiet and perspective. But in more recent years, he's begun to realise the perhaps more subtle but deep and certainly long-term benefits of doing a more loving-kindness-based practice. He's come to realise how much loving-kindness practice has benefited his interactions in work and in family by helping him love and forgive himself, to see others more kindly, and to understand why he finds certain people so difficult. He talks about having a healthy disrespect for authority, which has helped him deal with certain spiritual teachers over the years, as well as difficult bosses at work. He honestly discusses how he himself has been his own troublesome person, when, for example, his conviction in his own opinions become too strong, or when he's felt envious of other people's good fortunes. And in dealing with envy in particular, he describes how important he's found the practice of letting go, recognising that the pain of holding on was indeed greater than the pain of letting go. Welcome, Frank, and thank you so much for being willing to come on the podcast today. Maybe if you just want to start us off by telling us a little bit about how you came across Zen and Zen practice, and a little bit about your journey along that in the last few years. Or
Yeah, hi Marks. Good to talk to you over on this forum. Basically, I stumbled across a meditation back in the early 1990, and I was under a lot of stress at work, and I stumbled across how to reduce stress was one of my objectives, and I stumbled across this meditation course, and it was taught by two teachers from Friends of the Western Buddhist Order. They taught two techniques. I was in Dublin at that stage, and they taught two techniques. One was the mindfulness of breathing, and secondly was compassion meditation. And the mindfulness breathing was simply just counting your breaths, and your in breaths, your out breaths, then just dropping the counting, and then just an open sky meditation. And I literally, when I learned this technique, I was absolutely gobsmacked by what was going on in my mind,
Uh,
for years. The number of thoughts that were racing through my mind consistently, and there was no. I would jump from one thought to the next thought. Emotions would rise up, fall away. I was, is this what's happened? This has been happening to me for the last, I was 30 at that time, 30 years. I
yes.
just couldn't believe it. Uh, it was just fascinating to watch the show, as so to speak, and then the other technique, which was called metta. Actually, it was a compassion
Mm,
technique, and basically you're trying to generate some compassion for yourself first of all, and for a friend, and then for someone that's neutral, someone that you might only meet occasionally, and then for someone you're having a difficulty with, or a
yeah.
troublesome Buddha. Both these techniques combined were really beneficial. I For the first couple of years, I stuck with the mindfulness breathing more than the metta. But
Mm,
now, as I'm sort of going on, in my journey, I feel the metta is more important,
mm,
or more beneficial for daily interactive life with people and that. And um, so that went on for years. I went to see, read up all the books, Tish Naha. I read up a lot of books about Buddhism, Suzuki, Buddhism, and I got introduced to those little poems, which I love
yeah.
listening to,
Mm,
and uh, and then I started reading more about the Buddha, what he said, and the noble truths, and the eightfold path, and etc., and the Dhammapada, which I've read time to time. I just found the words of the Buddha where they rang true.
mm,
I found it very difficult to find fault or disagree with what he said.
mm.
And one of the aspects, if it, he said, "Don't take my word, for what it says. Investigate." And
Yeah.
I thought that was a very, from a teacher, that was a good approach.
It's a very humble approach, isn't it? Like, oh, these are the things I've found, but don't believe me off the bat. Go and have a look for yourself. And if you don't agree, you don't agree. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, normally I come from a Catholic background.
Oh,
Normally,
yeah.
this is the way it is. This is the word of God, and if you don't believe, you'll go to hell.
Mm.
That type of,
Yeah. It's a very, very
you know, a
different approach, isn't it? Mm,
very different approach. And
mm,
so yeah, so then yeah, then I started doing Aikido, which helped me, which was it was a martial art, a soft martial art, really, and it helps you to deal with conflict in physical form. It's pretend conflict, but still.
mm.
And I did that for about 5 or 6 years, and then I had a family. Of course, that stopped. But from what
Right.
I learned, yeah,
I know all about that. Exactly. We've got a little. He's just 11 months, and literally he just takes up so much time, isn't it? Yeah.
yeah,
You do just what you can, squeeze it in. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And then I've been so I've been at it fairly regularly for the last 30 years, and then in 2011 I went over to London. I was involved in the business world, and my company, we relocated to London from Dublin
Mhm.
because of the economic crash at the time. And I used to go down to the Buddhist center down in Eccleston Square for a lunchtime meditation,
Yeah.
and lo and behold, Dyson appeared in the scene. For giving He led the lunchtime meditation a couple of times, and I was very impressed with Dyson, particularly his posture. You know,
Mm.
uh, he, when he was meditating, his posture was just so, just something that stood out to me, and
That's
his
so
presence.
interesting. Mm.
Yeah, you can see it in him. You can see his stillness and his presence. He's there in meditation. He's meditating, and you know it when you see it. You know that type of thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
people
So
who have.
less about, like, I'm sure that he said some wonderful things, but you really connected with how he came across in his practice, posture, and
Yeah,
the feel of him.
yeah, in his presence and in his in the physical aspect of how he meditated.
Mm, mm,
Um, and it was very straightforward and direct. And
mm.
of course, I've read. He'd written a number of books, and then I went down to Camberwell a few times, and then I did a couple of retreats, and yeah, so I got into that. So I've been doing that, you know, ever since. And
Mm, mm.
then COVID came, and I came back to Ireland, and I retired. I didn't from work, and now I have a lot more time to meditate, and I find the Zoom is great. I log into the morning meditations, and
Oh yeah, joining
yeah,
meditation online. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm,
Now I'm also doing other. I mean, I do other. I'm involved in other groups for years as well, Theravada, and but I find myself leaning towards this sangha, the
yeah.
Zenways sangha a bit
Yeah.
because of the retreats I've been on and
Mm,
how good they were.
mm,
So here
mm.
I am, being interviewed by you.
Right. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it sounds to me you've had a very, a long encounter with Buddhism, and you've got a very broad perspective on the different traditions, and you've been involved in different groups and things like that. So, I mean, along that time, you said you originally got into meditating because of stress at work, and so stress you could see as being definitely one of our difficult situations. We encounter it on a regular basis. It comes, it builds. It's a kind of cumulative thing. So, I mean, how like maybe thinking back to those days, like how did meditation help with that kind of stress and dealing with work?
Yeah. Well, when I was working in that environment, I was under pressure to generate certain levels of income,
Yeah.
and against a very sluggish economic background, which is
So
very.
what was your profession roughly?
I was a stockbroker,
Stockbroker, yeah. Mm.
yeah, at that time. Of course, there was that pressure of generating income, and I would get paid a certain percentage of whatever I earned for the firm.
Yeah.
That's how it worked. You buy stocks for clients, and stock goes down, and you don't feel good about yourself. You don't like to lose money for clients, but a lot of the time, these things are outside of your control. I mean, you
Mm,
can't control what's happening in the economic environment. You still have to make an income, so there was a lot of conflicts there.
mm,
Uh, there was a lot of scrambling for clients, and a lot of competition between brokers. you
mm.
know uh, so that was one challenge, and I found the meditation created a gap between, just created a gap between what's going on in my head, what I need to do, and the actual. It's very hard to explain it, but
Mm.
when you're in the fray, it's very hard to extract yourself from the field of battle.
Mm.
And I don't like to use these military terms, but you're in the fray, you're caught up in life, and in trying to make an income, trying to keep everything going, and it's hard. You don't have the space to stand back,
Yeah.
and I find meditation created. You actually create that space. You say, right, I'm going to give myself a half an hour this morning, and I'm going to meditate,
Mm.
and that's my half an hour, and it's sacrosanct. And no matter what happens during that half an hour, barring a fire or something disastrous,
Yeah.
nothing was going to impinge on that. And that's what meditation. It just created that gap, just
Mm.
an away time from the pitch, so to speak.
And then when you sit back and you have that space, like, what does that actually do? Why is that a good thing? Like, you said you're in the fray, and it's very difficult to be able to get any kind of perspective, and so the meditation gives you an opportunity to give space. So what's the sort of result of that? How do you feel afterwards?
it dials down the noise, the tone, the emotions,
Mm,
the frantic thoughts. It dials everything down,
yeah.
and probably gave me perspective. Take a broader perspective that what's happening in the moment is what's happening in the moment. But
Yes.
over time, you could see that moment things change. Every moment just merges into the next moment. No moment is singly important. It just and the other thing certainly it definitely after a good meditation, I would often one of my teachers at the time, it's important to preparation to for the meditation is as important as the meditation, and also when you come out of a meditation, it's important to come out of it gradually
Ah,
and integrate back into daily life. And it was very good advice, and I often found those moments after meditation, I would just go and lie down for 20 minutes. It was beautiful, really, just to experience
mm,
peace.
yeah.
And then back into the markets and the screens and the phones and the memos and everything. Just
Yes, yes. So you managed to find time to do a little bit of meditation and then maybe have a rest during the middle of your day?
no, it was always in the morning time.
Oh, but before, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Mm, mm, mm,
And sometimes
mm.
then at lunchtime I would do it, and very rarely after work
Yeah,
because my best times are in the morning or
yeah.
during the middle of the
Mm.
day. And then then the meta meditation is starts to become more important. I often found that troublesome Buddhists like I often found can be difficult to develop metta for yourself.
Yeah, right. I mean, some people find that the hardest, right, to be able to direct that kindness towards themselves. Mm,
Yeah. Oh, and I found that hard myself, and I I think back maybe it's because of what expectations I put on myself, put on my parents, my teachers, and you always felt maybe you were never quite good enough, but you
mm,
are good, but everyone is good enough. But there was always you have to get this exam or you have to do that properly, or you
yeah.
know, um, and these kind of thoughts are ingrained into you from a very early age.
Mm.
And it's very good for people who are academically brilliant, and they always come first in the class. But you know, I wasn't in that category. I
Well,
was middle.
I'm not entirely sure he is that good for even people who are academically brilliant because, as long as you're on top of your game, you feel happy. But it's like that sense of the suffering is always there. Like if you become second, it's the worst thing in the world, that kind of thing. So
Yeah,
I think it's a source of suffering for all of us. Yeah.
yeah, it is actually. I agree with you. Um, but you don't have the. I often found with people who are brilliant in academic, they're very competitive,
Mm.
and they drive themselves exceptionally hard, and that is their stress now. But they don't have the same interaction with authority figures, the teachers, the priests, or whatever. You know, they tend to have a better relationship with authority figures, but with
Ah.
themselves and with their peer groups, they can be very tough.
Uh-huh. I
Uh,
see. Yeah. Yeah.
Whereas I found I always got on with my peer group, my school friends, and all that. I never really respected authority. I didn't respect authority. And I carry that. And that's one of my. I've carried healthy disrespect for authority all through my life, and you know, and it has manifested itself in dealing with bosses and dealing with bureaucracies and that, and it hasn't always been easy for me. And
So you say healthy respect. So I mean, I'm kind of interested in what you'd see that being. What's a
healthy disrespect.
healthy disrespect? Yeah, yeah. So what would that mean? I mean, how would you describe that?
Um, I don't trust people's motives. I don't trust authorities. I always suspect there's.
Would you say that's similar to what the Buddha said about you know, oh, I found this, but don't trust what I say. Go and find out for yourself. Is that along those lines? Would you say, or
Um,
like was he encouraging people to have a kind of healthy, um, uh,
yes, he was actually, yeah. And the fact that he came out and said, "Don't trust me," you know, don't trust me. Find out for yourself. Examine my
exactly? Yeah,
words, and that immediately, when someone says that to me, I immediately actually, okay, now I trust you. You know what I mean?
right,
You
right,
know,
right. Yeah, because someone has a it's a bit more humble, isn't it? Mm,
well, they have the self confidence in their own teachings.
mm,
To put them out there and to you know allow them to be stood up for scrutiny.
mm, mm,
Like a good scientist, they allow their
mm.
theories to be examined by their peer groups.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's such an important point that you raise about spiritual teachers, how important it is to go in with your eyes open and know that these teachers are all human, and some have got much more of a real grounding in it, and some people have some stuff they're still working on. And if we take their messages as like the truth, then we kind of like got our eyes closed a bit, and it's important to have that healthy mistrust of what's being said, because then we don't get duped or we don't get pulled into something which is not appropriate or whatever like that.
Yeah, yeah. And if I, yeah, and I found a lot over the years. I found a lot of some teachers. I felt, they do get caught up in themselves being a teacher.
Mm,
A lot of people come up to them and ask them for advice, and they're used to being in that position of knowing. They get kind of the ego creeps back into their practice a lot more.
mm,
So yeah, I've seen teachers change because they've become too influential or too full of themselves.
yep. Mm,
As someone
mm,
said, and same with authority figures. The higher up the greasy ladder they go, the more power they assume, and the more they believe that their way is the right way.
mm, mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. And I can
Powerful,
imagine that in the job that you've had in the profession, there's a lot of big egos. I mean, and
huge
a lot of
egos. Yeah,
competition, is it? Mm,
yeah, and a lot of self belief, like their way is the right way, and this is
right.
the right thing. And a lot of convenient forgetting, that they
Ah,
may, you know, it's just amazing, like how people say, well, this was the right thing to do then. It turned out to be the wrong thing. And people forget that they told other people that this was the right thing. You know,
mm,
um, I'm guilty of it myself, Mark. You just,
yeah.
the way sometimes you believe your opinion is the right opinion, then you know, you find out that it isn't the right opinion, So,
Mm,
um, so sometimes yourself can be your own best teacher as well,
absolutely. Absolutely.
and sometimes in the compassion meditation, you can find there's people particularly in the enemy or people you don't get on with. You'll find there's a lot of people there you mightn't like, and you don't know why you like them, and you look at it closely and you see that they might have a trait you see in them that actually it's in yourself.
Ah,
You know,
yeah.
it might be envy. One of my challenges in life used to be envy. I used to be very envious,
Yeah.
and it would eat me up. And it's a terrible emotion. Now I have sort of I've sometimes it comes back now, but it's largely been eliminated.
And what's been the main process in that then? How has that happened?
Well, I think letting go is very important. If someone has something that I desire and that I used to desire, just letting go of that desire of what they have or what they get, or if someone's in a working environment, if someone gets something that you feel you deserve, or
Mm,
they get the more recognition than myself, that would cause me stress,
Yeah.
in the early part of my career.
Yeah.
Um, Towards the end of my career, it didn't matter really, to be honest. But and I've seen it in other people. I've seen people, you know, they might they might get £100 more than somebody else, or they might get an upgrade from a business class to exec to first class, and there might be, the boss might have preferred them, and that would really upset. Someone might get a better iPhone
Yeah.
than their colleagues, and that would eat them up. Like it's not just me that was guilty of that, but a lot of people in my profession were
Sure.
guilty of that.
And
And
I'm sure that's very widely, and, people would resonate with that across anyone. Lots of people would.
yeah,
Mm.
so I think the way I found of dealing with that particular emotion is just to let go of the desire for or the need for to be recognized by somebody, or if someone does get something better than you, or just just say, fair enough, enjoy it. I don't need it. Just let it go.
I
And
mean, it's such a you say it in such a lovely way. I mean, it sounds really hard. How do we let go? I mean, what things have really helped you in finding that ability to let go?
I think is hanging on to the emotion of jealousy or envy or being hurt by not, being ignored, or the pain of holding on to that emotion becomes so great. It's easier, for to let go. There's less pain in letting go than there is in holding on to the.
Yeah, right, right, right.
That's how it is with me
Mm,
anyway. Right? I can sit here and stew over something for weeks and months, which is terrible, which can be very tell it can take a lot out of your system, or I
yeah,
can choose to let go of that. And okay, my boss doesn't recognize my contribution. He doesn't think I'm the best boy in the class. I don't, let go of that. Fair enough. That might be hard. I'd love to be recognized. I'd love to get the good recognition, or I'd love to get the iPad or the iPhone. But let that it, to get. Let's say I got that. It's the satisfaction of getting that would be a lot less than the pain of holding on to the.
yep. Right, right, right. Yeah. I mean, that's such a nice way of putting it. So there's something there around having the experience, like for knowing that if I hold on to this is very painful. Like I've done this before many times. And then also the recognition, like the awareness that that is what I'm doing. I am holding on right now, and this is causing me a lot of pain. And actually understanding that if I am able to let go of that, it's going to take me to a place of less pain. So
Yeah,
there's a kind
yeah,
of recognition that this is a pattern that happens, and the awareness that is happening, and then the practice of actually doing something different.
yeah. Letting go. Yeah, I
Mm.
think that's why. Uh, yeah, that was one. That's one way of doing it, and then it's longer. And then I just another. The more I look at people, and people I don't like, or whatever, have trouble with, try and put myself in their shoes, and in my opinion, anyway, at least most people are suffering enormously, and
Mm. Mm.
a lot of people are under huge delusions.
So kind of looking beyond the difficulty itself and recognizing that this comes from a person with their background and their own suffering and
Yeah,
delusions and
yeah.
things. Mm.
My friends and that a lot. There's not one person that I know isn't hasn't that has some suffering. They might have lost their
Mm.
partners. They're going through divorce. You just become more aware of what's going on. It's now. Having said
Mm.
that, there's no shortage of troublesome Buddhas.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Well, that's the thing, isn't it? So I
But
think
they're
it's
great teachers. They're
mm,
great teachers.
Yeah, yeah, and the really important thing is that there's plenty of troubles and Buddhas, but it's about having your eyes open, isn't it? And being able to see that these are people, right? That have their own stuff and suffering and life issues, and that changes the perspective. And I wonder, perhaps, in this metta meditation that you were describing about how we purposefully include more and more difficult people in that practice of wishing them kindness, helps us to maybe like experiment with putting ourselves in their shoes and looking at why they're suffering.
Yeah. Well, I just find with the meta, I just with the mindfulness of breathing, the benefits of it are quite direct and they're very quick. You can get into very pleasant states of mind after a good meditation, and that can keep you going for a good part of the day. With
Mm.
the meta, it's more difficult. It's actually quite a struggle to get into. You can't force happiness upon yourself.
Yeah.
You can't, but you can aim towards that. But I've noticed that with the meta, you be it's more subtle, and you go out. You don't feel the same, state of mind that you would after the mindfulness of breathing. But you notice throughout the day, you might show more appreciation of
Mm.
things. You just look at people more closely. You try. It's more subtle,
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and in many ways, I think it can be more beneficial, particularly if you're in a family situation or a work situation where you're interacting with people on a lot or on a daily
Mm.
basis.
Mm.
Uh, and
Yeah.
some ways, this this is over the last 4 or 5 years now. I've come to think maybe the compassion meditation, it might be more beneficial really than just mindfulness of breathing or concentration
Yeah.
meditation. But
Mm.
both I find enhance each other. Both. If you do one and the other, do both of them together. They help each other.
That's
So
right. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So this, the breath focused, more concentration meditation has more of a direct change in the way that you are, like immediately. As you say,
yeah,
like gives you the space and the perspective, and maybe like helps things to calm down a bit and release and things, and that makes us feel good straight away, and calm and relaxed. Whereas the metta meditation has a maybe can be quite challenging, quite
yeah,
at the time, but has much more of a lasting effect in the way that we see people in the world.
yeah, yeah. I think so. I think yeah. You do sit down before a meditation. You say, well, if I'm what's really good is having compassion for someone. If I say wish compassion upon you, it how does it give you compassion? It's not like as if I give you something and
Yeah.
then you feel better. The rewards are less immediate, but they're greater. I should say they're more beneficial.
Yes. Yes.
It's
Yeah.
more longer term, and
Mm.
because yeah, I mean, just an example there. A couple of weeks ago, I joined. There's this Theravada group that I join occasionally, and there's this young girl there. She's in her 30s. She's a doctor, an NHS doctor. She was doing a compassion meditation, and I just looked at her, and she was actual when she was doing the compassion. She was actually compassion in itself.
Right.
She wasn't. It was flowing through her.
Mm.
And I was gobsmacked by the
Mm.
by
Mm.
she was like in a state of she looked in a state of ecstasy, to be honest.
I mean, that's just remarkable to know that someone who's a doctor in the NHS has that going on.
Yeah,
Because I mean, can you imagine what she'd be like at work and things? I mean, just amazing, amazing.
yeah, that thought went through my mind as well.
Mm. So you said that um, how can I give you compassion? It's not like I give you anything, like
Yeah,
when I offer you compassion, but in a sense, like you in her presence received something, right? I mean, there was something going on in the
yeah,
room, and
yeah,
you were able. So
yeah,
it's like beyond like a um, giving an object. Like there's something bigger, right?
yeah, yeah,
I'll stick up on the podcast also a metta meditation, like a guided meditation for people to follow, because I
Yeah,
think it's a really lovely thing for helping us to approach and deal with our difficult people. Like as you say, it can really change our perspective and help us to look at things from a different view and step into their shoes. And yeah,
yeah. Only lately I'm doing a bit more than,
okay,
it's at the beginning I couldn't see the direct benefits of it, but as I progressed over the years, I'm beginning to see them now,
yes, okay,
25 years later.
yeah, okay, makes sense.
Oh, I was a student, Mark.
Yeah. Indeed, indeed.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, well, thank you so much for, offering your wisdom and your experience and some of your examples. I mean, it's really lovely to hear.
Thanks, Mark. Have a great day.
If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave a review and a star rating on whatever platform you use. And do recommend it to others, because we all meet difficult people, and each of those meetings presents an opportunity for learning and growth. I also have a downloadable video course in how to deal with difficult people. Head over to my website for more information, markwestmaquette.co.uk. Thanks for listening.